Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 2 wide receiver start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season, going in depth through every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way up until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the wide receivers in all of those games. But before we can get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 2 wide receiver start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with game number 1, Thursday Night Football. The no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. In this matchup for the Dolphins, both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are must starts. Tyreek Hill went absolutely nuclear after he was detained by the police just a couple of hours before the game. The man was the wide receiver 4 on the week with 7 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown. Even though as a Dolphins fan, I do realize that this game could end up going very wrong for the Miami Dolphins. You would have to be absolutely crazy to sit a guy like Tyreek Hill. This is a guy with top 5 upside every single week. He is a must-start wide receiver regardless of the matchup, so I'm definitely firing him up with supreme confidence this week up against the Buffalo Bills. Jalen waddled away, waddle, till the very next day. Had a great showing last week, going 5 for 5 for 109 yards as the wide receiver 16. With Reek on the team, it is hard to ultimately rank him as a top 12 guy because we know how involved Tyreek will be game in and game out. But even with just getting 5, 6, or 7 targets, Jalen Waddle's a guy that could take one of those targets, 99 yards, to the crib. So Jalen Waddle is a guy you want in your lineup every single week, and for me is a high-end wide receiver 2 in week number 2. Braxton Berrios appears to be the Dolphins wide receiver 3 with Malik Washington banged up with Odell Beckham Jr. on the IR. There's nothing really much to say about Braxton Berrios in terms of fantasy football. There is absolutely no reason to start him or no reason at all to even have him on your roster. For the Buffalo Bills, Shakir went 3 for 3 with 42 yards and a tug up against the Cardinals last week, and he could definitely replicate that performance this week against the Dolphins. But with volume being so important in fantasy football, and with him not being the clear, undisputed wide receiver 1 on the Buffalo Bills, or even seeing a solid target share last week, I think Khalil Shakira should be on the bench. I think you're getting too cute if you start him in this game. Keon Coleman, to me, looked good in his rookie debut with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 51 yards. And if Keon Coleman develops into the clear number 1 option on this team, then he is going to be a real diamond for your fantasy football team. But as of right now, in week number 2, until he becomes that, I think you just want to keep him on your bench as a stash or a guy that if someone's hurt on your team or there's a bunch of bye weeks, you can definitely play him. Curtis Samuel, out of nowhere, like an RKO from Randy Orton, is going to score 20-plus points multiple times this season. It is basically a guarantee with him, but you never know when it's coming. There's going to be a matchup up against the hardest defense in the NFL, going up against the 85 Bears, and Curtis Samuel is going to pipe them down. And then he's going to play up against a defense like the Cardinals, like the Commanders, that is softer than baby shit, and he'll score 2 fantasy points. He is either hot or cold, so I am just going to go ahead and stay away from him. I don't think you want anything to do with him up against the Dolphins defense in this game. Underdog Fantasy has a great offer for you guys. If you are a new user using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will be able to claim your free pick, which is Josh Allen higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So you match Josh Allen higher than half of a total yard with a player from the Dolphins or a player from one of the games on Sunday or Monday, and you receive 3 times what you put into the pick'em. Again, make sure you sign up with promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description to claim your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. If you're watching this after Thursday Night Football, you'll receive a different free pick. Moving into game number 2 here, the first game on Sunday, we got the New Orleans Saints at the Dallas Cowboys. Now, despite the fact that Derek Carr put the Panthers defense in a body bag, Paulie Walnut style, didn't really matter because Chris Olave put up a fucking dud performance. Olave had 2 receptions for 11 yards. I was very worried about Olave in the summer, and my worries came true. Now, it's only one game, right? So we can't panic. We can't fully jump ship, bench him, cut him off the team, right? But up against the Cowboys, I wouldn't expect this to be the coming out party for Chris Olave. Derek Carr did look good, though. So maybe that's promising for the future. But again, the Panthers defense is straight up cheeks. So I don't think it's really all that telling. He's a low-end wide receiver, too, for me on the week. Rashid Shaheed drug his nuts on the forehead of the Panthers last week with 3 receptions on 5 targets for 73 yards and a score as the wide receiver 15, which is exactly the upside that we spoke about Rashid Shaheed having all summer long. With him being super hit or miss, and with this being a tougher matchup, this isn't the game where you want to catapult Rashid Shaheed into your lineup. I think this is a comeback to down-to-earth game up against the Cowboys defense. Cedric Wilson is a sit. You should know that. I don't even think if you're in a 32-team league, you would even consider starting him, so he is a very clear sit. For the Dallas Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb had a letdown performance. Now, it wasn't such a complete and utter disaster where he was like the wide receiver 72 or something, but with the high draft capital you paid for CeeDee Lamb, it was bad, right? Because you're expecting, top 12 game every single week. He's the wide receiver 23. Again, definitely didn't sink your battleship, but not the best. I expect his snap share to continue to get ramped up, and I do think he could easily be the number 1 wide receiver, the best fantasy football wide receiver on the week up against the Saints. I know the Saints defense looked rock hard, like your cock off some Viagra last week, but ultimately, that's the Panthers. The Cowboys are a much better offense. You got to start CeeDee Lamb every single week, regardless of the matchup. Brandon Cooks is a guy that if you're in a deeper league, I would consider starting him, but he's going to be listed as a sit. He had 4 receptions on 7 targets for 40 yards and a score last week. I think Cooks could be solid in this spot, but with really no wide receivers banged up, with no teams on bye, I don't think you want to go ahead and start Cooks this week, but he is knocking on the door of being in the start-worthy range. Jalen Tolbert played a load of snaps last week, but is currently 3rd in the pecking order. With Jake Ferguson likely out, we could see a better game out of Tolbert, though. He's a very interesting player, but ultimately, in week number 2, you're getting way too cute, getting way too spicy if you start a guy like Jalen Tolbert. Game number 3, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Detroit Lions, a rematch from the playoffs last season. Iron Mike Evans hit the defense last week, how Ivan Drago hit Apollo Creed in Rocky IV. It was a devastating blow. He was the wide receiver 6, and I expect him to strike again in week number 2 up against the Lions defense. This is not a wet dream matchup like it was for him last week up against the Commanders, but with how Baker looked, Evans should flirt with a top 8 ranking on the week at wide receiver. We got a vintage performance from not only Mike Evans, from his teammate Chris Godwin as they formed an Eiffel Tower over the Commanders defense. Godwin had 8 receptions on 8 targets for 83 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver number 8. Just like I suspected in the summer, I believe Godwin will be a reliable wide receiver 2 for you weekly. And if he is your flex option, you are absolutely bricked up for him to be your flex. Based upon the matchup, though, again, cupcake matchup last week, definitely a tougher matchup this week, but he should be a mid to low end wide receiver 2 on the week. Jalen McMillan is another player that we also talked about in the summer, and I talked about how underrated he was, and he even found the end zone in his first ever NFL game. A round of applause for him. But he is locked up, don't let me out, Akon style behind Evans and Godwin in the pecking order. If something was to happen to either guy, knock on wood, you'd probably want McMillan in your lineup. But with both guys healthy, no need to start him. For the Detroit Lions, I saw some angry comments last week. Nick, I played Amon-Ra St. Brown, and oh my God, I'm going to have to cry myself to sleep after Sunday Night Football. The man had 3 catches for 13 yards, and he was the wide receiver 72. But there is 0 reasons to overthink what we saw in that game and magically believe that Amon-Ra St. Brown is no longer the guy in this offense. He is still the alpha wide receiver on the Lions, and this game script could easily, up against the Bucs, lead to him being the wide receiver 1 on the week. He's a clear top 5 wide receiver. After one down game, especially in week 1, you don't want to panic too much. Just like I don't want to overreact on Amon-Ra St. Brown, I am not going to overreact to Jameson Williams and claim that he is now the king of the castle. Shout out Borat, the clear number 1 wide receiver on the Lions, right? That would be absolutely crazy. We know what Jameson Williams is. He is a boom, shout out the Costco guys, or bust player weekly due to his big play upside. But if you can see a much more steady amount of targets each and every single week compared to what we've seen throughout his career, he could become a guy that becomes consistent. Now, again, do I think that's incredibly likely? No, but it is still possible. Last week, he had 5 receptions on 9 targets for 120 yards and a touchdown. He can become a whole lot more reliable of a player. Again, do I think that's the most likely scenario? No. He's a fringe starter for me, but because the upside, that's what puts him over the edge. Mia Khalif Raymond is a sit. We don't even need to talk too much about him. No one has Khalif Raymond on their team. Next up, we move to the Indianapolis Colts at the Green Bay Packers, and the injury of Jordan Love was a dagger into the heart of the Green Bay Packers. I was starting to buy into the Packers. I bought into the Packers all summer long. I was buying Jordan Love stocks, and his stock and the Packers stock fucking plummeted when he got hurt. Jaden Riley-Reed, Deebo Samuel 2.0 looked amazing, like Samala Hayek's rack in that game up against the Eagles in Brazil. He was looking beautiful, like a BBL. But now, with Jordan Love down for the count, we are going to have to watch Reed play with the DoorDash driver, a CFL quarterback in Malik Willis. Reed is too good to sit him. But honestly, if you have better options, Reed is one of the last guys I'm starting with. To just hope that Malik Willis magically just becomes good. But I've seen a lot of Malik Willis, and he's not very good. For the other Packers, like Christian Watson, I love Christian Watson. But with Malik Willis under center, which we just talked about, you just can't rely on him, right? Watson's a touchdown guy. He needs that touchdown to truly have a big game. And with the touchdowns probably being far and few in between with the Packers, we're not starting Christian Watson. And everything I just said about Watson applies to Romeo Doubs. Very touchdown reliant. You got to sit him. For the Colts, letdown performance up against the Texans for Michael Pittman. Because Michael Pittman didn't catch one of those Kim Jong-un nuclear missiles from Anthony Richardson that he uncorked in that game. But he is still clearly the wide receiver 1 on the team. He had 8 targets, and there are brighter days ahead for Michael Pittman. You got to trust the process. I will keep ranking him as a high-end wide receiver 2, and with how the Packers defense looked, which was just Swiss cheese up against the Eagles, this could be a huge showing out of Michael Pittman Jr. For the Indianapolis Colts, Adonai Mitchell was second in targets on the team, but only brought in 1 catch for 2 yards. Now, Adonai Mitchell is just a kid. Now, I wish I could do the Tony Soprano impression, because if I could have done a Tony Soprano voice there, the he's just a kid would have been a lot more funny. With bigger games coming in the future for Adonai Mitchell, as we sit right now, it would kind of feel foolish to start him. Alec Pierce was the benefactor of one of those nuclear missiles being thrown by Richardson, as he went 3 for 3, like a free throw, for 125 yards and a touchdown. Ultimately, while I do like the matchup with Downs potentially coming back, I don't really think playing Pierce is all that smart of a bet. So next up, we move to game number 5 here, the New York Jumbo Jets at the Tennessee Titans. Now, Garrett Wilson sold my parlay by 5 yards, so he's officially had me on tilt last night. But ultimately, while the Jets kind of felt like, same shit, different day, same shit, different year, different quarterback, all of the hype, and they come out flat. Had that one drive early in the game where it's like, woo, look at Rodgers, woo. And then it was like, okay, now the team's like dying, right? But, and this is a big but, shout out Lena Paul, I wouldn't panic after one game. Again, week 1 is a liar. Week 1 is a deceiver. Don't worry too much about week 1. The guy saw 11 targets and is the clear number 1 on the team. The bounce back is inevitable up against the Tennessee Titans, and he should be ranked as a wide receiver 1 until further notice. Now, Allen Lazard ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in that game, one from Mr. Discount Double Check and one from Tyrod Taylor, ranking second in targets behind Wilson. With that said, one strong game doesn't have me ready to get down and bend my knee like I'm in Game of Thrones here and give Lazard more credit than he's due. I don't really think he's all that good, and I don't think he's a start-worthy fantasy asset just yet. Magic Mike Williams was on a snap count and was running wind sprints out there. He played 18% of the snaps. When watching the game, I saw like twice where he was open and he just didn't get the ball. Coming back from a torn ACL, though, I wouldn't panic on Mike Williams. If Lazard keeps cooking, though, it's going to become to a point where it's like, okay, maybe we just cut bait on Mike Williams. But I think Mike Williams is a far superior player than Allen Lazard. So I'm not worried yet. I think eventually Mike Williams will become start-worthy. For the Titans, Calvin Ridley had 7 targets, which led the team, and he had more than double the receiving yards compared to the second-ranked teammate on the Titans. But with Hopkins probably playing a bigger role as the weeks go on, and you mix that with the matchup up against the Jets D, I get the Jets defense was soft in that game, but I think they're going to look a lot better against the Titans. I would leave Ridley on the bench, especially since Levis looked like he was seeing ghosts up against the Bears. D-Hop had only 1 target coming back from the knee injury. Again, I think he's going to get ramped up more, but right now you don't want anything to do with Hop. Same thing goes with Tyler, yeah, Boyd of the Tennessee Titans. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Debo. While Brandon Ayuk was busy playing fucking grab ass with Jaden Daniels and all these other teams, I want to trade this, that, and the other thing, Debo must have been locked in with Brock Purdy because he sliced up the Jets defense like his name was Jack the Ripper. If McCaffrey misses again, which seems like more and more of a possibility, as he has Achilles tendonitis, which sounds no bueno, as they say in Espanol, we will see Debo get a minimum of 5 carries with Jordan, the numbers Mason, back there as the lead back. Solid matchup here for Debo as a high-end wide receiver too. Ayuk dropped a touchdown in that game like his name was Boo Boo Smith-Schuster. If the guy can lock in, right, if he's more locked in this game, the connection gets better between him and Brock Purdy, then, he could end up having a really big game. But it's very likely they're going to continue to ramp up his workload. And I think he belongs behind Debo in the rankings right now. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he fell outside of the top 30 at the end of the week at the wide receiver position. Juwan Jennings had a solid game, but he wasn't even really the talking point of the game because even though he went 5 for 5 for 64 yards and is the clear wide receiver 3 on the team, the cool point of this game, I guess Mason and Debo, it was Ricky Pearsall. The man was on the sideline rocking the fucking Rolex that the guy tried to steal from him. So shout out to Ricky Pearsall. With Ayuk getting more ramped up, though, I don't think you should really be starting Jennings. I think you're getting way too cute if you try to start him. Justin Jefferson. All summer long, all I hear is this bitching and moaning. Oh, man, Justin Jefferson's not going to do shit without Kirk Cousins. Okay, now I get he didn't have the best game ever. 4 receptions on 6 targets for 59 yards and a touchdown, but you can clearly see that Sam Darnold isn't a complete and utter disgrace to this country like their opponent Daniel Jones was. This is a matchup where the Vikings will have to throw more as they should be down, which is going to boost Jefferson's targets. Could be a low-end wide receiver 1 on the week due to the matchup, but the guy is so good. You can't rank him lower than that. Jordan Addison-Ray got banged up against the Giants. He was already banged up going into the game. Now he's got an ankle injury, and he has significant soreness. According to head coach Kevin O'Connell, frankly, even if he does play banged up, I would not want to start him up against the Niners. Jalen Nailor, I barely knew her, found the end zone last week. Nice for him, but that was on his only target. He had one target. He scored a touchdown. The team also used Brandon Powell and my boy Trent Sherfield, so Nailor isn't even the clear wide receiver 3 or the clear wide receiver 2 if Addison misses. Next up, we move to the Seahawks at the New England Patriots in Foxborough. If you guys have enjoyed today's video thus far and you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Make sure to leave a like on today's video as well. It would help me out a ton. Now, this is a game where if you wanted to argue that you just want to stay clear away from the game, you want to avoid it at all cost, what I would tell you is that's not that crazy. With the Patriots, the targets last week, it was one of those, you get the ball, you get the ball, you all get the ball, Oprah Winfrey style performances by Mr. Jacoby Brissett. Now, Osborne had 6 targets. Austin Hoopa, the Poopa Scoopa, had 4. Hunter Henry, 3. Tyquan, 3. Douglas, 3. Stevenson, 3. And my man Polk only got 1. Until further notice, you should stay clear away. Don't even get close to this team's passing attack. So Polk, Osborne, Douglas, anyone you want to start, or you thought maybe you should start, just sit him for now. I think it's going to take Drake May playing to truly unlock one of these guys. Metcalf for the Seahawks. Last week, the Patriots defense had Joe Burrow in shambles. He was all shook up, oh, like that Elvis song. And I think that this could end up being a very low-scoring affair as well. With Metcalf having only 3 receptions for 29 yards last week. Sure, maybe that was due to Patrick Surtain putting the clamps on him. While I do think that the game plan here will be a whole lot of Kenneth Walker, Metcalf is just too fucking good for me to list him as a sit, but he's kind of just in that high-end wide receiver 3 to flex range with great upside due to how good he is. But again, it does feel a little bit suspect to start him. Tyler Lockett in my pocket. Skirt! Wow. In the running back video, I said the joke of death taxes, James Conner, right? James Conner is just inevitable Thanos style. He's just always out there balling. And in this video, it's death taxes, Tyler Lockett. The motherfucker led the team in targets, receptions, and you guessed it, receiving yards. I still don't want to start him, but honestly, if he does it again, I would consider starting him going forward. JSN. For JSN, it felt, eerily like last season. It felt like it was fucking Freaky Friday. 2 targets. 2. Made me sick. I was sick to my stomach watching that. Hopefully better days are ahead, but as of right now, you don't want to be starting JSN. Next up, we got the Giants versus the Commanders in Washington. Now, if you want to hear a rant about the Giants, watch the running back start-sit video. There, I got kind of angry. I was frustrated. I recorded that video late last night. I was tired, and I took out all of my unpent aggression on Daniel Jones. Danny dimes, Danny fumbles, Danny stumbles, Danny bum. It was a shit show for the Giants offense in week 1 against the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Neighbors was the only good player on the team. It really felt like it. 5 receptions on 7 targets for 66 yards. His upside, as of right now, feels a little bit capped by Daniel Jones being so bad, but against the Commanders defense, where I think I could probably get open, I think Malik Neighbors should be a top 18 wide receiver, and that's what you drafted him to be. Wandale led the team in targets and looked good in week 1. But with that being said, the only pass catcher I want to even come remotely close to starting is Neighbors. Jalen Hyatt should be the 3, as Darius Slayton is in the concussion protocol. If Slayton plays, he'll probably be the number 3. But if you're not starting the number 2, you're clearly not considering the number 3 on a Daniel Jones offense. Terry McLaurin, no bueno. Jaden Stormy Daniels looked good. But Terry McLaurin was an outcast like Andre, okay? No bueno. But as we talked about thus far in the video, it's a big focal point of this video. Week 1 is a liar. Week 1, you can't really take too much from it. You don't want to just be like, week 1 is how week 2 is going to be. Because if you do that, you are going to fall into a scenario where you oh my God, it's going to happen again. This, that, and the other thing. And then McLaurin's going to go out there and fucking teabag the Giants defense. So against a awful Giants defense, I think McLaurin should get his feet wet, his toes wet as a solid wide receiver 3 or flex option. Luke McCaffrey was on the field, unlike his brother, for the Commanders and had 3 targets. But even in a wet dream matchup, Luke belongs on the waiver wire. Dyami Brown did less than McCaffrey. I don't even think Dyami Brown's family has him on his fantasy team. So we definitely don't want to be touching him or Luke McCaffrey. Game number 9 here, we got the LA Superchargers at the Carolina Panthers. Now, I am a Deontay Johnson truther. I have been giving the metaphorical gawk gawk 9,000, the Hawk Tua spin on that thing special to Deontay Johnson for years. I loved him last year. The quarterback play had him sleeping with the fishes. This year, the same exact thing is probably going to happen. I thought that Bryce was going to be able to figure it out with the quarterback whisperer Dave Canales as the head coach. But as of right now, you can't start any of these guys on the Panthers. The Panthers offense has more bums on it than a Bang Bros shoot, so I just really can't be playing him. Leggett was the number 1 target. Who gives a shit? You're not starting Leggett. You're not starting Thielen against the Chargers defense. As expected, the Chargers love to run the ball. So that's, again, didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But Ladd looks, as of right now, that he'll be the guy in LA for the Chargers. 5 receptions on 7 targets for 39 yards and a score. I wouldn't give him the Sukalamink special here just yet and just give him the crown for Nero Targaryen style. But I do like Ladd as a fringe start due to how nut low the Panthers defense is. Palmer got into a fight, a rock'em sock'em robots matchup up against Raiders cornerback Jack Jones. It had shades of Mike Evans versus Lattimore in the past, which was cool to watch, but I like Palmer. But if Ladd is presumed to be the guy on a run-heavy team, I just don't think you should be starting Palmer. Quentin Johnston doesn't have hands, so you're not going to start him. Next up, we move to the Cleveland Browns at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we have already made fun of the Giants. We've already made fun of Bryce Young and the Panthers. And now it's time to make fun of the Cleveland Browns. I honestly think I would rather be trapped in a jail cell with Kimbo Slice, with John Jones, with Daniel Cormier, with Habib Nurmagomedov, overplaying one of Deshaun Watson's wide receivers. He's so fucking bad. He's so bad. I don't know what happened. It's truly sad. And actually, it's not sad because it's Deshaun Watson, but you get what I mean. He's not himself anymore. He looks like pure ass. And I just, I think Cooper's going to be okay because Cooper's so good. But if the ball is dribbling his way like it's a fucking bounce pass in basketball, I just don't know. Cooper's a great receiver, but he's at the mercy of Deshaun Watson, which is just terrible. Jerry Jeudy scored, but I refuse to start anyone not named Cooper in this wide receiver core with Watson. And Elijah Moore, you already knew you didn't need to start him. So Amari Cooper, I thought Watson, I didn't think he was going to be back and amazing. But we've seen so many bad games out of him in a Cleveland Browns uniform. And I get, Nick, it's only week 1. Don't fully panic. How can I not panic at this point? It's just been so bad. So bad. Christian Kirk is another guy that's a fringe start just like Cooper. I could honestly see this game being very low scoring, a straight up fucking snooze fest. But he should get enough targets to be fine, but I wouldn't expect anything special. Brian Thomas Jr. to me looked great, in my opinion, in his first ever start. His output, though, wasn't the best. He was 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's for 47 yards and a touchdown. As he gets more and more reps at the NFL level, I think he will be great. Shout out Tony the Tiger, but he's more of a fringe start. But honestly, I think I would start him over Amari Cooper. Gabe Davis is another one of these guys where he is exactly what you thought he was. He is a big play wide receiver. Last week, he led the team in receiving yards, but he only had 3 targets. In plus matchups, or if your wide receiver, one of your wide receivers is hurt, or, you kind of just feel like you need that extra pizzazz, that extra spice to your lineup, then you can play him. But with no bye weeks and up against a Browns defense that should be able to bounce back, there's really no reason to play Gabe Davis. Next up, we move to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Raiders punted the ball at the end of that game against the Chargers in plus territory. It was 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. Why did they do that? I like Antonio Pierce, but that was an absolutely dunce move. That was what was the coach's name before? McDaniel? That was some Josh McDaniels bullshit. I was low on Adams all offseason. Now, I wasn't so low to where it's like you can't draft Adams, but I didn't like him because I didn't see the upside. And I fell into the trap last week like a mouse with some cheese against the Raiders, right? I thought, oh, not against the Raiders, against the Chargers. I thought, oh, great matchup for the Raiders. Going to be great. But he did exactly what I thought he would do. He's an amazing wide receiver in an offense that is dragging him down. I expect more fantasy points going forward, but ranking him inside the top 12 is a very bullish and risky move. I got him as a low-end wide receiver 2 on the week up against a tough Ravens defense. Kobe Myers, just like Adams, I think Myers is getting his salad essentially tossed by Gardner Minshew in the offense. If the quarterback play gets better, Myers could be dangerous like Russell Wilson, but until then, you can't start Myers with a single ounce of confidence. Trey Tucker's a fun player. You're going to see him break free, soaring and flying like Troy Bolton and Gabriella, but he's on the Raiders. So, I mean, that's really all you needed to know. Devontae Adams is a start on the Raiders, but again, it just doesn't feel the best. If Lamar Jackson was truly locked in, if he was dialed in, Zay Flowers would have scored a touchdown at the end of the Chiefs game. Probably won them the game. Because he was wide open, and Lamar, the running back, fucking missed him. He missed him. The offense used Flowers heavily, and I suspect that with 10 total targets last week, we're going to see a similar occurrence this week. Much better matchup for him as well, and I expect a bounce back and could easily see him outscoring Adams in that wide receiver 2 range. Rashad Master Bateman does this every couple of games where he manages to look like the guy we wanted him to be coming into the NFL. And then he proceeds to disappear like fucking Houdini. So don't expect much, even up against the Raiders defense. Nelson Aguilar, Eagles legend. Is the Ravens like 5th or 6th option? Leave him on the waivers. Next up, we move to the Los Angeles Rams, the beginning of the late slate at the Arizona Cardinals. Cooper Kupp got more balls in his hands last week than Asa Akira. 21 targets, 14 receptions, 110 yards, and a tutty with Puka out for a minimum of 4 games, and it seems like, sadly, it's going to be even longer. Kupp will be hitting the Cardinals with that sweet chin music. He'll be hitting them from the back. How you like that? Without a doubt, Kupp is a top 3 wide receiver in my rankings. The Cardinals defense is trash. Demarcus Robinson was 2nd in snaps behind Kupp in week number 1, and now with Puka out, Demarcus should become a reliable option for you, especially up against the Cardinals defense that wouldn't be able to stop me. DeMarcus is in that wide receiver 3 flex range. Tyler Johnson actually outperformed Robinson in week number 1, and in deep leagues, he may be worth a roster spot. I'm still going to lean with DeMarcus Robinson as the number 2 option on the Rams. Nick, now you get to talk about the Cardinals. You told me to draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and Marvin Harrison Jr. laid a dump on my chest. I know. Marv threw on the invisibility cloak like he was in Harry Potter. 1 reception for 4 yards. And he was wide open for a touchdown, but Kyler didn't see him because that midget bastard can't see over the offensive line. Hardy har har, right? It's been 1 game. So if you're ready to sell Marvin Harrison Jr. after 1 down game in his rookie year, right? You're going to sell him for a used condom and a half-eaten bag of potato chips, some fucking Doritos. You're crazy. You are crazy. And you are going to enjoy the immense amount of sadness that will ensue when Marv gets the targets. No panic here. Start Marv. Now, I won't be as bullish this week. I won't be as excited. He's a mid to low end wide receiver 2 for now until we see more. Now, Greg Dortch was the wide receiver 1. 8 receptions for 8 receptions. The fuck did I write down? I write down all the player stats. I read them off to you. 8 targets for 6 receptions instead of 8 receptions on 6 receptions, but that makes no sense. So 8 targets, 6 receptions, 47 yards with a tougher matchup this week. And my belief being that Michael Wilson is better than him, and I think Marv will be more involved, so I'm not getting cute and starting the short king, Greg Dortch. Michael Wilson, 1 reception for 5 yards, but he scored. It would appear as Dortch is higher on the hierarchy right now in the pecking order, but again, I'm not going to guarantee that after just 1 game. Next up, we move to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Justin Fields going up against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos in Mile High. Fields appears to be locked in as the starter right now. Maybe there is a miracle and Mr. Unlimited is able to play, but as of right now, based on everything that I've read from Mike Tomlin and that I've watched on Twitter, the clips, seems like we are going to see Justin Fields as the QB1. Now, Pickens had a decent showing last week against the Falcons, but now he gets to go up against Surtain, which worries me because Patrick Surtain is amazing. So that worries me enough not to be super gung-ho with my ranking of George Pickens and not rank him super highly. Now, if for some reason Patrick Surtain is non-George Pickens, which would make no sense, George Pickens is going to have a 5-star feast here, but I doubt that's going to be the case. I've got him in that wide receiver 3/flex range, but I do expect Fields to look even better in this game to be able to support George Pickens. Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin III, you already know about them. They ain't that good. And if I'm nervous about starting George Pickens, who's an amazing wide receiver, why would you start Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin? Cortland Sutton. Bo Nix was on the struggle bus last week. A lot of bad plays, but it's his first ever game. Again, we don't jump ship on these guys in one fucking game. Okay, we just don't do that. And Bo Nix was feeding Sutton. He had 12 targets. But now they're going up against a stronger defense than they faced last week. While I do think that Sutton could turn out to be like a late round stud, or maybe people drop him because they're panicking about Bo Nix, and maybe Cortland Sutton becomes a league winner. But as of right now, up against the Steelers defense, you'd have to be crazy to play Cortland Sutton. Josh Reynolds, Marvin Mims, they're obvious sits as well. Next up, we move to the final game before Sunday night football, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if you asked me a week ago, Nick, are you excited for this matchup? I would have been bricked up like I'm off a honey pack. But right now, before week 2, after the Bengals just got their ass handed to them by the New England Deflatriots, I am not the most confident. Jamar Chase played more snaps than I expected last week and led the team in receptions and receiving yards. Not the Chase that we are used to, though, in terms of production. The whole Bengals team didn't look good, and I am going to be nervous as a whole with this team entering into Sunday against the Chiefs because Joe Burrow didn't look the best and Chase didn't look the best. I still think, though, if you bury Chase down in the rankings, you're getting a little bit too cute, but he can't be ranked as highly as you drafted him because of the clear question marks. Higgins, Adam Schefter said on the Pat McAfee show yesterday that he would be shocked to see him play with the hammy. And even if he does play, clearly going to be, hit with the injury sickness. What would you call that? Hit with the injury bug, I guess, right? With the hammy. So I wouldn't play him. Andre Iosivas, he could be interesting in deeper leagues, but up against the Chiefs, ultimately, I wouldn't want to start him, even with T. Higgins out. For the Chiefs, I'm going to do a quick little victory lap on Rashee Rice. I told you during the summer that Rice is a fucking monster, like Grimace, like Frankenstein. He had over 100 yards and 7 receptions against the Ravens. Now he gets to go up against a worse Bengals defense, and I expect Rice to put up very reliable numbers all season long. He's the clear number 1 receiver on this team, and he'll be top 10 in my rankings on the week against the Bengals. Now, Xavier Worthy got as lucky as it gets last week. He was up all night to get lucky, like that Robin Thicke song, whatever the fuck his name is. He scored 2 touchdowns on 3 touches. He had 3 touches and scored 2 touchdowns. How likely is that to happen again? But his high speed provides him that great boom or bust upside in any given matchup. For instance, if you have a guy like Amari Cooper, a guy you're a little bit, Cooper the silent type, if you're a little bit nervous about John Cooper the silent type, if you get that, but if you have a guy like Amari Cooper who you're just really suspect on, and you have Worthy, I would rather just take the shot on Worthy because while the floor might be in the basement chilling with Ron Stewart, the upside is on the moon. Hollywood Brown, most recent report is that he may be able to play according to head coach Andy Reid. If he does play, though, I'm sitting him. If he doesn't play and Juju's in there, you're sitting him. Next up, we move to Sunday Night Football, the Chicago Bears at the Houston Texans. 4 let me down big time last week, but it wasn't because of volume. It wasn't because of his own play. It wasn't because he wasn't able to get open. It was because his quarterback, Caleb Williams, looked really bad. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It wasn't like, oh, he had 1 bad play, or oh, he made a couple of bad throws. It was bad all game. It didn't look like it was getting better. I like Caleb and think he will be a great NFL quarterback, so I'm not ready to panic yet. DEFCON 5 mode. But with that said, I think you would be getting very cute ranking more anywhere inside the top 20. So he's a low-end wide receiver 2 to high-end wide receiver 3 for me. Keenan Allen had 11 targets, but just 4 receptions due to Caleb Williams' play. Like I said with DJ Moore, things will get better with Odunze now banged up, and it's seeming less and less likely that he plays. It looks like Keenan Allen and Moore will be the clear number 1 and 2 targets as of right now. You can argue to have Allen ranked ahead of Moore because he had more targets in week 1, but again, I feel like you're kind of just looking too far into things. If you want to do it, though, it's fine. I do have them ranked back-to-back. Michael Jordan 96, 97 in my rankings. The most recent report on Odunze is he checked out fine after the game on Sunday against the Titans, but he woke up with his knee feeling tender, and he brought it up to the doctors. So he said, as of right now, the Bears are not going to rule him out for Sunday Night Football, but it would be a surprise if he plays. If he misses, we'll see old man Velus Jones get more touches, which would be a unmitigated disaster for the Chicago Bears. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell are all starts. Now, Nico Collins was just a small margin, a minuscule margin away from being a top 12 finisher. He was the wide receiver 13 last week. He led the team in targets against the Colts with 8, and he had 6 receptions for 117 yards. Problem? Diggs scored all the touchdowns. He scored 2 touchdowns. Collins will be the wide receiver 1 on the team, and that's what I was talking about in the summer. I think he will be the number 1 guy. Bears defense may not be as great as I thought, but again, don't really want to panic too much about week 1. Could be a high-end wide receiver 2 to low-end wide receiver number 1 in my rankings. Diggs went 6 for 6 for 33 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't love what I saw, but the touchdowns took him over the top. Going forward, he is a high-risk, high-reward wide receiver 3. I think Nico feels like the condom wrap. Put the Trojan around your squad. You play Nico Collins. Diggs feels a little bit risky. Tank feels a little bit risky. Dell out-targeted Diggs. Diggs did outperform him, though, due to the touchdowns. 3 receptions on 7 targets for 40 yards for Dell. As I said with the wide receiver start-sit video last week, this wide receiver core is going to be very up and down. I think Nico Collins is pretty clearly the number 1, and then Diggs and Dell will kind of be up and down every week with some games where I guess Nico Collins might get iced out. So one of them is going to be the odd man out, but because of such big game upside here, you're going to rank them all as starters. So all of the Texans are starters. Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are starters for the Bears. Next up, we got Monday Night Football, the Atlanta Falcons at the Philadelphia Eagles. Cousins looked really bad. I'm going to be honest with you. He's coming off the torn Achilles, and London was a victim of the quarterback play. He only saw 3 targets, and it sucked. Now, we have Kirk in a primetime matchup, and we know how those go. No good. Could be a recipe for disaster, not a recipe of sugar, spice, and everything nice like the Powerpuff Girls. Regardless, though, as Kirk gets more accustomed to the system and maybe just is able to plant his fucking feet correctly, you can't sit London, though, but I'm not ranking him inside the top 12 until further notice. He's a top 24 guy. Darnell, here comes the Mooney. If my confidence level in Drake London isn't the highest, you're not starting Darnell Mooney or Ray McCloud. For the Eagles, A.J. Brown looked better than Megan Fox in Transformers. A.J. Brown's performance was sexy. Wide receiver 7 on the week, 5 receptions on 10 targets for a tug. The Eagles' passing attack took a back seat, though, as Saquon dicked the Packers down in Dallas, but the path towards a top 5 performance is clear for A.J. Brown up against the Falcons defense, so it would be a top 5 wide receiver in my rankings on the week. Devontae Smith, while Brown had the better performance, the Slim Reaper looked great as well. 7 receptions on 8 targets for 84 yards. The Kellen Moore offense was looking mighty fine, so Smith will be a wide receiver 2 in my rankings weekly as, assuming the matchups aren't too rough. And then Jahan Dotson, he was out there. That's what I'll say about him. He was out there in week number 1. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you didn't enjoy, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Make sure you guys check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, link on in the video description. If you're a first-time depositor using promo code Notorious, you'll be able to claim your free pick like Josh Allen, higher than half a total yard, as well as getting that first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and I'll see you guys back in the morning on Wednesday with 2 videos. Love you guys. Have a great one, and as always, good boy.